We've got breaking news on the House of the Dragon Season 2 front. We're going to get into casting news, filming news, right now on the Sundowners Club. Welcome, I'm your host, Sean. Sterling, my co-host. So we've been talking about House of the Dragon Season 2, and we've covered a lot of the casting news. There's one character that looms large over House of the Dragon as the series progresses, and that is the character of Cregan Stark. And while there's been no official word, we have a lot of sources that are coming out now and saying that he's been cast and they have the name. And it's none other than Tom Taylor, and we will put Tom's image on the screen so that you can see Tom. Keep in mind, a lot of these people that get cast in these roles, their hair doesn't exactly stay the same when they end up on the show. So as you can imagine, from House Stark and Winterfell, we've already talked about visiting Winterfell. But first of all, let me back up and let's talk about Tom Taylor as Cregan Stark. You see the image of the young guy that's going to be playing Cregan. You don't have any preconceived notions because you didn't read the book.
No.
But you did watch Game of Thrones, so
Right.
you know House Stark.
Yeah.
What do you think just physically?
He looks like a Targaryen. Just the way he looks. But I mean, I don't know. It looks like he's got blonde hair, so I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to need to see him in the role. He's not a well-known actor.
He didn't have the Stark look really, but
But here's the deal.
they can change that easy with hair. I mean,
That's what was great about Game of Thrones. We didn't know any of the actors other than Sean Bean, and
Right.
there were a few, actors that
Sean Bean and Leah Headey were the only ones that I had seen in anything before that.
yeah, and the guy that played Robert Baratheon and the guy that played Tywin Lannister. There were
Yeah.
character actors that
Right.
and Walter Frey. There were actors
That you'd seen in a few things. Yeah.
that filled out the cast. But that was what was great about the show was you had people that you were seeing for the first time. So when you saw Kit Harington, you didn't know Kit Harington. That was Jon Snow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to be cool about this is that Tom Taylor, for better or worse, will be Cregan Stark. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how much Cregan it plays into season 2.
Is he a huge deal in the books? Because I have no idea.
He's a huge deal in the story of
Really?
the culmination of the Dance of the Dragons and what ends up happening. You've heard me reference the Hour of the Wolf.
Okay.
That's going to be towards the end. That's not giving anything away. We know that House Stark is, Sigil is the wolf.
Right.
So the dire wolves, but yeah, he looms large now. How much we will see Cregan Stark in the second season remains to be seen. But we do know that Jace is headed to Winterfell to gain the allegiance and alliance made with House Stark and Cregan. So we know that he's going there. We know that he's going to play a part. But really excited to see it. Look, unofficially, looks like Tom Taylor will be playing Cregan Stark. Just like Kit Harington, when you first see him in season 1 of Game of Thrones, he looked one way. He looked a lot different by the time you got to season 7, season 8.
Right. Yeah.
They changed his hair. He grew up a little bit, got the beard. And so I think we're going to see the same thing with Cregan. Although the Dance of the Dragons doesn't take place over a long period of time,
Mm-hmm.
but it'll be interesting to see how they change Cregan as his character develops over 4 seasons, which is what we think the show will run. But looking forward to seeing Winterfell again, Cregan Stark, and everything that goes around, all the machinations around who is going to be allied with who.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting for me. You already know primarily what's going to happen because you read the books, and I expect they'll stay pretty close to that. But for me, I have no idea, so don't spoil it for me.
Well, and keep in mind, we've said this over and over again, but the books, Fire and Blood, is told from the perspective of the Maester. So,
Which allows them to change things.
yeah, it's almost like, hey, here's the history, but it doesn't mean that that's exactly how it went. And what happens between the lines, those gray areas.
Right.
And so, the TV show is definitive. So when you see something, you're seeing it happen. And so that's what's interesting, even as someone who's read the book. And so very exciting news. Check out winterscoming.net, Redaining Intelligence. Even look at some of the sites like one of the good YouTube channels out there, Sir Hunt's Reviews, David Lightbringer, and then also on Twitter, check out Westerosi's, who also covered Cregan Stark, Tom Taylor being cast. those are a lot of great content creators that cover Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. So I wanted to give them a shout out. While we're talking about House of the Dragon, we also got a title for the first episode and of season 2, and it is A Son for a Son, which tells us that we've been talking about Blood and Cheese, and Blood and Cheese sure looks like now it's going to show up in episode 1. So right out of the gate, we're going to get violence and we're going to get death, and people are going to be shook watching the first episode. Now, keep in mind, we only have 8 episodes for season 2, but
not a lot of filler content.
No filler. Knowing what we know is going to happen, this is going to be a bloody, death-filled season 2 with a lot of ramifications, and we're going to see that in many instances, sons and daughters tend to bear the burden of the decisions of their parents. And that's what happens is that the children are growing up and taking center stage in this fight. And we're going to see that in season 2. So A Son for a Son looks like it's the title for episode 1 of season 2. We also want to talk about that it looks like they're going to wrap filming the first week of October, the end of September, first week of October for season 2, which is great news because House of the Dragon season 1 wrapped in February of 22. And they debuted at the end of August of 22. So roughly 6 months. Now, they've got a lot of big battles and big scenes to post-production to fill.
So they do all the CGI afterwards, right?
Yeah, they're working on it while they're filming, but there's a lot of post-production that goes into this. Think about the battles because they're on location, but there's also CGI work with the dragons and everything. So if they stick to the 6-month time frame, we could have the debut of House of the Dragon season 2 in April. Which, if you think about the fact that Warner's and HBO, Warner's and Max talked about having a streaming loss lost over $500 million due to the strikes, they want to get this show out. So, but I don't think they'll sacrifice Casey Bloys and the team at HBO, and they won't sacrifice quality. So my prediction is we're going to get the show in August of 24. But it will not shock me if we see an earlier premiere based on the expectation of them wrapping shooting the first week of October. So good news among all the other content that's been shelved due to the writer's strike. One thing that wasn't shelved was House of the Dragon Season 2. Couldn't be happier about it. And let's talk about one final thing. While we're talking about House of the Dragon, let's talk about the author himself, George R.R. Martin. This is fascinating. There was an article in The Guardian. George R.R. Martin himself is involved in filing a lawsuit, along with at least 17 other authors, including John Grisham himself, from The Firm and from The Client and from The Rainmaker. And it's a lawsuit against the founders of a company that owns and runs ChatGPT. And it's really confusing. You have to really dig into the lawsuit. And what they're doing is they're suing OpenAI, Open Artificial Intelligence, the creators of ChatGPT. And according to The Guardian, the writers claim that the software company trampled over the copyright by feeding its program with their books, training it not only in natural language, but perhaps eventually to produce page turners of its own. And what's got George R.R. Martin raining down fire and ice on ChatGPT is that there was already created an unauthorized, according to this article on The Guardian and Tim Adams, detailed outline for a prequel to George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones novel series called A Dawn of Direwolves. And what do you think about this lawsuit? We've talked about AI and the larger ramifications. The writer's strike and the actor strike there's been involvement around what's going to happen with AI. What do you think about this lawsuit from the writers and how their content is used by programs like ChatGPT?
Well, I mean, that's what AI does. It basically takes all the information it can find on the internet and then strings it together however the creator wants it to do so. So if you say, write me a new Game of Thrones story, it will find anything that the authors wrote, or it could pull from anybody who's written fantasy and string it together to make a story that's coherent. And as time goes on, that's only going to get better. And
But they'd have to prove some sort of financial damage, right? Like if they haven't sold a Dawn of Direwolves and made money off of
No,
it.
but
then,
the fear is that they can use AI to write everything, and they won't need writers. I think ultimately that's what the fear is.
so they're trying to put some checks and balances in place around
I mean, think
programs.
how cheap that would be. You own a program who can write a quality story, and it's just pulling information from previous works. I think eventually what they'll do is they'll probably try to come up with the situation where it pays those creators royalties or something. But
Well, this is going to be an important case because it's going to define what are the boundaries, what are the rules around
and
it,
it's
right?
not going to just go into writing. I mean, it's for art, it's for video games, movies,
Music.
music.
Rob Burnett and I talked about
Yeah.
you take an AI version of Prince.
This is something that could spread to every single
Taylor
piece
Swift.
of entertainment. I mean, you've seen those videos. You have Elvis singing "Baby Got Back," and
Yeah.
it's just an AI,
Yeah.
AI version of it, and it
it's
sounds
horrible, but
to me, it sounded like how Elvis would sound. Although he'd probably never sing that song, but I mean, it's just,
yeah.
and it's only going to get better as time goes on. So I mean, I think they're trying to find a way where they can guarantee they have a job going forward, and I completely understand that.
We'll put a link to the article up in the notes of the video. I think it's important stuff, and George R. R. Martin is one of the ones leading the charge in that. So what's the future of AI and these programs like ChatGPT around writing stories and cutting writers out and actors and artists? And so very important stuff. Wanted to talk about it while we were talking about House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. We're all Game of Thrones here, all things George R. R. Martin, Song of Ice and Fire. So let us know what you think. What do you think about Tom Taylor being cast as Cregan Stark? What do you think about the chances of the show debuting in April or anytime prior to August of 24? What do you think about the lawsuit that's been filed against ChatGPT by George R. R. Martin and others? And tell us in general, what do you look forward to about House of the Dragon Season 2? Let us know what you think. Leave a comment, smash that like button, and hit subscribe so that we can continue to grow our channel. And TCB.